Today, we are talking about one of nature's most incredible stories. Seriously, it's a tale of high-stakes strategy, survival, and just an amazing transformation. We're going to follow the entire journey of how a simple flower turns into a fruit. Let's get right into it.
Have you ever really thought about it? You see a tree just covered in beautiful blossoms in the spring, and then a few months later, bam! It's loaded with apples. What in the world happens in between? Well, we're going to peel back the curtain and look at the fascinating biology behind that whole process.
All right, so to really get this story, we first need to meet the players and get to know the arena where all this action happens. And that arena is the flower itself. And trust me, it's not just there to look pretty. It is a super sophisticated piece of reproductive machinery.
So, at the very heart of our story are the key parts inside the flower. You've got the male parts, which are all together called the andrecium, and the female parts, the gynecium. Now for the pollen, which is kind of the hero of our story, this is both the launch pad and the final destination. Okay, let's start with the andrecium. That's just the fancy, official term for all the male bits of the flower. Its one critical job, its whole purpose in life, is to produce and get the pollen grains ready for their incredible journey.
So let's look at how it's built. The entire male unit is called the stamen. It's basically made of the filament, which is just a stalk, and its job is to hold up the most important part, the anther. You should really think of the anther as a tiny factory, just working non-stop, churning out thousands and thousands of pollen grains.
Now, every hero needs a destination, a goal to strive for. In our story, that's the gynecium, the female part of the flower. And this structure holds the ultimate prize, the ovules. If everything goes according to plan, those ovules will one day become seeds.
And the gynecium, which you might also hear called the pistil, is basically a fortress. First, the pollen has to stick the landing on the stigma, which is designed to be super sticky just to catch it. Then it has to navigate this long, treacherous pathway called the style. And finally, if it makes it, it reaches the ovary, this secure chamber protecting those precious ovules.
Okay, so the stage is set. We have our pollen, and we have our target. The next chapter is all about action. We call it the Great Dispersal. How does a tiny, tiny pollen grain make that massive leap from one flower to another?
Well, plants have come up with some pretty ingenious strategies for this. Some, like grasses, they just play a numbers game. They release tons of super lightweight pollen into the wind and just hope some of it lands in the right spot. But others, they're master marketers. They create these bright, fragrant flowers with a sugary nectar reward to basically hire couriers, like bees and butterflies, to do the job for them. Some aquatic plants even use water currents to get the job done.
And you know, where that pollen lands is a huge deal. If it just lands on the very same flower it came from, that's called autogamy, or self-pollination. If it lands on another flower but on the same plant, that's gynogamy. Both of those are pretty similar genetically. But the real jackpot for genetic diversity is xenogamy, cross-pollination between two completely different plants. That mixing of genes is what drives evolution, allowing plants to adapt and survive. It's a huge deal.
You might think, okay, pollen landed, job done. But nope, not even close. Landing on the stigma is only half the battle. Now the most critical, most dramatic part of the journey begins. The final, internal race to fertilization.
So let's zoom in on our little hero here, the pollen grain. It's not just some speck of dust, it's a highly protected little vessel. It's got this tough outer shell, and inside it's carrying two very precious male gametes. These are the genetic keys that will unlock new life. The second it lands, the clock starts ticking. The pollen grain germinates. It starts growing this tiny tube that literally tunnels its way down through the style, racing towards the ovary. And those two male gametes, they travel down this tube on a one-way mission to deliver their genetic cargo. And when it finally gets there, oh man, something truly remarkable happens, something that's a special signature of flowering plants. It's called double fertilization. It's an incredibly efficient process, and it really is the climax of our entire story. So, why double? Well, remember those two male gametes it was carrying? One of them fuses with the egg cell, and that creates the zygote, which is going to grow into the baby plant embryo. But the second gamete fuses with the central cell to create something called the endosperm. It's a brilliant two-for-one deal. You get the baby, and you get its packed lunch, all in one go.
So, with fertilization complete, the flower's main job is pretty much done. Its petals wither and fall away. But this isn't an end at all. It's actually a brand new beginning.
Now the ovary starts its grand transformation from a flower into a fruit.
Meanwhile, inside that developing seed, that single fertilized cell, the zygote, starts dividing like crazy. It becomes a little ball of cells, then it starts to take on a heart shape, and eventually it develops into a mature embryo. It's a miniature plant, already complete with a root and a shoot, just waiting for the right moment to grow.
And what's fueling all this incredible growth? Well, it's that endosperm, the packed lunch we were talking about. This stuff is super nutrient-rich, and it provides all the energy the little embryo needs to develop and survive until it can pop out and start making its own food. It's a brilliant survival strategy.
So while the seed is developing on the inside, the ovary wall on the outside begins to swell up and ripen. When the fruit develops only from this ovary, we call it a true fruit. Think about a mango or a peach. The fleshy, juicy part you're eating is literally the transformed wall of the flower's old ovary.
But wait, there's a plot twist. Sometimes other parts of the flower want to get in on the action. In what we call a false fruit, other floral parts, like the base of the flower, swell up right along with the ovary. And remember that apple from the beginning? Surprise! It's a false fruit. The juicy part we love to eat is actually the swollen up base of the flower. Now, just when you think you have it all figured out, nature loves to break its own rules. Ever wondered how we get seedless bananas or grapes? The answer is often parthenocarpy. This is a wild process where the fruit develops without any fertilization happening at all. And for us humans, this is a huge win, letting us grow all these delicious seedless fruits.
And if you thought that was cool, check this out. Apomixis. This is where a plant makes a seed, but it does it asexually, no fertilization needed. The seed that's produced is a perfect genetic clone of the parent plant. It's basically the plant making a perfect little copy of itself, a powerful way to reproduce if it's already doing really well in its environment.
So there you have it. From a pollen grain's epic journey to that double fertilization masterstroke, the creation of a fruit is just an amazing story. And what's wild is that plants figured all this out millions of years ago. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible natural marvels are happening all around us, just hiding in plain sight?